Welcome back to Mr. Stewart's Lessons, and we're getting really close to getting our scrolling platform world as good as we want it to be. There's just a couple more things to do. Right now we have a ball guy that can fall and run and jump, and the world scrolls around him. And we're getting really close, but we notice we have a little bit of a problem, which is we can only go to a certain part on our screen because all that happens right now is the whole screen scrolls around us. What I want to do is to actually be able to move inside of the screen and to be able to move to the edge, so this screen will only scroll when it needs to. That is, when we get like over here or over here, we want the screen to scroll. Otherwise, we want to just be able to move within the screen. So here's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to open up the ball guy code window, code editor. What I'm going to do first, I want to add a few variables. It's convenient for me to know how big my world is, by which I mean the actual screen, not the map. So I'm going to what I want to do is I want to assign that at the beginning, but there's a bit of a problem because if I just say I can say world, my world, assign that variable, but if I just say world my, you'd think I just say world my world equals get world, for example, but that's not going to work. If I do that, it's going to give me a null pointer reference because it's going to actually try and assign that before I get assigned to the world. So I don't want this to happen until I get assigned to the world. Fortunately, there's a way around that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create these three variables, which is my int world height, which is going to be the height of my world, and my int world width, which is going to be the width of my world. As I said, I don't want to assign these variables until I'm actually added to the world. Otherwise, I'll get a null pointer reference. So, fortunately for us, there is a method called added to world, which is entirely for this purpose. So I'm going to say public void added to world, and you can actually even see this is one of my options, already part of one of the choices we have here. Added to world, and so we're basically creating a new version of this method, which normally does nothing. So this when I create this and I put world, then when the actor gets added to the world, it's automatically going to call this method, and it's going to have the world in it. So I don't have to say world my world equals get world. All I have to do, the world which will be called, will already have the world, actual sky world, in it. So all I have to do is say my world equals the world. So basically I'm saying this variable up here, which I created, is going to be equal to this variable, which is inside the method. Of course, I have to assign it to a new variable, a field that I've created up here. Otherwise, it won't last any longer than when the method is running. So now, anytime I need to call the world, I just say my world. So now I'm going to just assign the world height and the world width. So I'm going to say world height equals my world dot get height. This is going to just get the height of the world, and world width equals my world dot get width. So now I just have these things, so I don't have to call it every time I need to get the height and width of the world. That saves a lot of trouble. So right now you should just add this part right here, the world my world equals get world, int world height, int world width, and assign those in your added to world method. Now what I want to do, the next thing I want to do is I want to change the set location with scroll method down here. And so right now the set location with scroll method is fairly simple. all it's doing is just calling the shift screen method to move, which is going to move all the platforms around me when I need to move, and it's going to this int shift x and int shift y is how much I move it. But we're going to have to do something a little more sophisticated, because we only want the world to scroll when it needs to, and that's when we get within 200 pixels of the edge of the screen. So here's how I'm going to do this. First of all, I'm going to take this part out because we're going to have to change it a little bit. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say I'm going to want a if statement, and the way it's going to go is this: if, and it's kind of a big if statement. So if my new y is less than 200, which means that I'm within 200 pixels of the top of the screen, and the my sky, which is the world that I got up here, right? And I typed it to world. My sky top bound, which you may remember is the top boundary of the world, is greater than 0. Okay, which means that the top bound is going to have to be, that means the top bound, we can't be at the very top of the screen. If we're at the very top of the screen, we don't want it to scroll. Okay, so greater than 0 means we're somewhere below the very top, I'm sorry, the top of the map. We're somewhere below the very top of the map, because if we're at the top of the map, we just want to be able to scroll all the way to the top. And now, so that's the first part. Or, there's a couple ors in here. So this is an or statement, just so you remember, if this is an and statement, this is an or statement. Okay, so this is basically saying if we're near the top, if we're not near the top of the screen, or we're not, the whole screen isn't near the top of the map, or new y is greater than world height minus 200, which would be we're not near the bottom, we're near the bottom of the screen somewhere, and my sky bottom bound is less than, right, so my sky bottom bound is the bottom of wherever, the bottom of the screen, is less than the bottom of the map, which is the my sky dot map, should be capitals, map height. So what we're doing is we're checking to make sure, this is checking to make sure we are somewhere below 200 pixels from the top, from the bottom of the screen, but the bottom of the screen is somewhere above the height of the whole map. Okay, and that's, so this is complicated. Basically, just to recap the whole thing, right? We want it to scroll. This is going to scroll if we're within 200 pixels of the top of the screen, and the screen, the top of the screen, isn't near the top of the whole map, which is here, right? Or we're within 200 pixels of the bottom of the screen, which is this part right here, and the bottom of the screen is not near the bottom of the map. Then what we want to do is, we're going to get the shift y as we did before. And what we're going to do now is we're going to just shift the y only, not the x, because we're going to have to do the x and the y differently. So I'm going to do my sky dot shift screen. And we want to shift the x 0 because we're going to shift the x later on in this method, minus y shift, sorry. No, minus shift y. Okay, so we're shifting the x and the y separately because sometimes we might want to scroll in the y direction but not in the x direction, or sometimes we want to scroll in the x direction but move regularly in the y direction. Okay, and so now if this is not true, if this whole if statement is not true, then we just want to just set the y in the normal way using the regular set location. That is, we just want to move within the screen, not scroll the whole screen around us. So I'm going to say an else statement, and what we want to do is we're going to set location, which is the regular set location method, which already comes with our actor, and the x is going to stay the same. So the x is going to stay the same, just using the getX method and the new y. So this is going to this is going to just have so this is going to scroll the screen above or below us, and it's only if we're going near the top of the screen, but the top of the screen isn't near the top of the whole map. Now we're basically going to do something very similar in the x direction. So I'm going to say if new x is less than 200, that is, we're getting near the left side of the screen, and the left bound of the sky is greater than 0, that is, the left bound isn't bumping up against the whole left side of the map, or the new x, our new x location, is greater than the width of the map of the screen, the width of the world, by which we mean just the screen we're on, minus 200, that is 200 pixels from the right side of the screen, and the right bound of the sky is less than the width of the whole map, really hope I'm not putting in any typos here, because this would be very easy to do. So just to recap, we're checking here to see if we're within 200 pixels of the left side of the screen, and also that the left side of the screen is not bumping up against the left side of the whole map, or that we're within 200 pixels of the right side of the screen, but also that the right side of the screen is not bumping up against the right side of the map. Then what we want to do, sorry about that, what we want to do in that case, I'm just putting in some spaces to clear this out so we can see what the different parts are. Then what I can do, first I'm going to get the shift X just as I did before. Okay, so I'm going to leave that part in there. Now what I want to do is I want to do the same thing I did. I want to just shift in the X direction. Either I want to just if I'm going to need to scroll, I'm only going to scroll in the X direction, because we might want to scroll in the X direction but set the location regularly in the Y direction. So I'm going to say my sky dot shift screen, and we're going to shift the do the shift X, and the y is going to shift 0 because we already shifted the y however we want to shift it, whether we're doing it by scrolling or whether we're doing it by just setting the location within the screen. So now if we've done that, so now that's what would happen if we are coming near the edge of the screen in one direction or the other. But if we're not, then what I want to do is I'm going to do an else statement just as we did before. If we don't need to scroll the screen, then we're just going to set the X in the regular set location method. And the Y we're just going to get from the regular get Y method, because that's just going to the Y we're not changing in this part. So I know there's a lot to that set location with scroll method, so I'm just going to put it there so you can see the whole thing for a sec, just see all the parts. And you might want to rewind and listen to this again, because this is a pretty complicated little part that we've done here. So now I'll compile this to make sure there's no typos, and sure enough there is. I forgot a capital letter in top bound. So top bound should be capitalized, the B should be capitalized there. Sorry about that mistake. Okay, and now we have no syntax errors. So what I want to do now is I want to, there's one more thing I want to change here in ball guy, which is I'm going to go up here and I want to make a change up in the move method. So you should scroll up to the move method so you can do this. So inside my move method, here I have, this is the part, you see this if platform below not equal null. You remember this is the part where we check to see if we're on a platform, and we want to make sure that we're not falling through or sticking into the platform. We've been starting way up in the sky before, and I want to check to make sure we're not on the ground now, because I'm going to I'm going to start the game with us back on the ground again. So I'm going to move this else statement down, and I'm going to put in a else if here before this else statement, before the else in the array equals true. I'm going to say else if, and this is just checking to see if we're on the bottom of the screen, basically, which is only going to happen if the map is all the way at the screen is at the bottom of the whole map. So get y is greater than or equal to the world height minus the ground height, which is the you may remember is from the middle of the ball guy to the bottom. Then what I want to do, I'll do an open curly bracket and a closed curly bracket before the else. Then what I want to do is I want to see if we're falling, just as we did in the, it's very similar to what we're doing up above, and we did up above in the platform section. If we're falling, which would mean delta y is less than 0, then put an open and closed curly bracket here. I'm going to make us stop falling by setting delta y equal to 0. I want to state that we're on the ground, that is, we're not in the air. Last of all, we just want to declare that we're put our feet firmly on the ground by saying that new y is equal to the height of the world minus. So this is going to make sure that we're firmly on the ground, not sticking halfway out of the ground, which looks silly and ugly. Now we have to make a few things. We're just going to make a few changes to the world, but first let's just try this out and see how well this works. We can see what's going on here. And watch the difference here. See how we're going to we can go to the edge of the screen. Notice how we go to the edge of the screen and then we move, right? We can move within the screen now, and the screen scrolls to either side of us. And now all I want to do, just want to make a little change to the sky. So I'm going to open up the sky code window. And what I want to do with the sky code window is I want to move the guy down to the bottom, basically. And that means we have to change the bottom bound and the top bound. So the bottom bound before was just the height of the screen because we were topping up at the top. Now the bottom bound is going to be the height of the whole map that we created up here, which is the height of the whole map that we're on. So I'm going to change the bottom bound to, and this is how it was before, back to map height. Sorry. This is a good, oops, sorry. This is a good place to use copy and paste to avoid typos. If I can use copy and paste right. And the top bound is going to be the map height minus the get height, the height of the world. So now all we want to do, if you didn't have this in here, you might not have had this in here before. So we want to add a new ball guy. You may have already had this in here, not exactly sure. So we want to add our new ball guy in here. And we want to add our object. We're added our object. If you don't have the add object, we're adding object, the ball guy, right? We're adding him. Okay, so I'll just retype this whole line just so you can see how we do it. We're going to add object, which is, this is the ball guy, which is our main character guy. We're going to add him. We want him to be in the middle. Let's put him in the middle of the screen. The easiest way to do the middle of the screen is to get the width of the screen. And we're going to divide it by 2. So this will just put him in the middle of the screen in the vertical direction. And then we want him to be at the bottom of the screen. And now we want to make sure that he's exact. So his feet are on the bottom of the feet. He doesn't have feet, but the bottom of the image is on the bottom of the screen. So we want to subtract the half his image. So the ball guy has the variable ground height, which is how high he is. So this is going to put us on the exactly on the ground. And so we've now added our guy. He's now at the bottom of the whole map. Forgot my open and close parentheses after ball guy. When you create a new object, you have to put open and close parentheses after it. Sorry about that mistake there. So now you'll notice now he's at the bottom of the whole world. I'm going to run it. Notice what happens. He moves to the right. He moves to the left. The world only scrolls when he needs to. And the world scrolls when we jump, but we can go to the bottom of the whole world, and we're just about done. The last thing we need to do is just tidy up the way these platforms move a little bit. These platforms come on the screen a little bit, and we're going to fix that in our final lesson. I'll see you then.